Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tech Rules Uncovered. This is a series of live events in which we are talking about different rules and techs, always with great and phenomenal guests. As you may know, this is a live event, so you can add value, you can ask questions, also share your experience. And you can do that by adding your questions, your comments directly in the comment sections of LinkedIn or YouTube. And for the first time, we are also streaming to Twitch. So for the case that that you are watching us from Twitch, you can also use the chat, and then we are happy to answer that. Today's topic that we are gonna uncover is the role of an analytics engineer, a quite new role that popped up in the data space. And for that, I invited a phenomenal guest for today, of course, as always. And she is an independent analytics engineer. So she is working already in this role for a couple of years. And what is special for her is that she also has experiences as a data engineer and also as a data scientist, also as a researcher, because she also has a PhD in applied cognitive science and the big area of psychology. So I'm pretty excited to hear where are the differences of an analytics engineer to, for example, a data engineer. And yeah, she worked for several companies in the future before. The last one was Paddle. It's a payment service from London. And yeah, she also has experiences in the medical industry, especially biotechnology. So I'm really happy to welcome her on stage. Here is Marielle Dado. Welcome.
Hi, Sarah. So nice to be here. Thanks again for inviting me.
Thanks for being part of the series and
Yeah,
sharing your insights on the role of being analytics engineer.
sure, sure.
Yeah. So, how should we start? I think you may
Yeah.
know it. Probably or most of the time, I'm starting with some kind of introductory questions. And of course, I also prepared some for you. And you have no idea what
No.
I'm gonna ask you.
No. Be nice,
Yeah.
be nice. I'm not good with surprises, so but yes,
True.
go ahead.
So yesterday we had our technical checkup, and
Mhm,
you explained me that you're a big coffee lover,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
So my first question is: do you prefer drinking your coffee at home, or do you prefer going to a good coffee house?
Good question. I like the kind of ritual of making my own coffee.
Hmm.
Since I do that, kind of pour over thing where, grind the coffee for like 5 minutes and then pour
Hmm.
it in a filter paper and then you pour water on it and it takes all of like 10 minutes, which is like a lot more time than what most people will have patience for in the morning. But I like it because, it kind of slows you down and so that like you start the day not in a rush, that kind of thing. So I do like, yeah, making my coffee at home. So
So,
yeah, that also saves me a bit of money. But I do like to go like visit coffee shops every now and then,
mhm.
especially when I'm traveling. It's a good way to like check out the local culture and see what the local coffee scene is about.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So you're also preferring the manual brew and like filtering coffee, right?
Yeah.
As I'm
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, but like I told you, I'm not here to judge other people's choices. If you
Hmm.
use a machine, that's fine as well. It's just that I like the manual process because it slows me down. And so I feel like I can enjoy my coffee in my morning a little
Amazing,
better. Yeah.
amazing habit.
Well, I could be weird for some people, but yeah, that's me.
To continue this topic even further, my second question is I
Yeah.
checked out your GitHub profile. By the way,
Ooh. Mm.
audience, you should also check it out. And I
Yeah.
found an interesting repository, and you
Yeah.
built a scraper on coffee reviews, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I think a couple of years ago. Um, Yeah, and I believe I used it to I think it was, like, German coffee reviews, right? Like, for
Yes.
ethical coffee. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
wanted to, like, get an idea of how, like, the German market perceived ethical coffee and what they thought about,
Hmm.
like, yeah, buying coffee at a premium price,
Hmm.
versus, like, kinda supermarket coffee or kind of instant coffee that you get from just one of the big, like, food conglomerates. So yeah, I don't remember what the results were, but I did test out my skills in scraping, so I think I
Ah,
was like,
cool.
go
So
check it
you
out.
combined your data skills, practice a
Yeah,
little bit, but also, at the
exactly,
same time, it's still about coffee, your
exactly.
passion.
Yeah, exactly, and I don't think I put this up on GitHub, but I also did I created a dashboard on Streamlit, which is like a Python framework for creating dynamic, dashboards.
Mhm.
And it was based on, coffee scoring for, like, specialty coffee. So, like, you can enter the kind of certain parameters of, like, kind of specialty coffee, like what the elevation is of the coffee, like where it was harvested and stuff like that, and you'll see whether it's rated higher or not. So I tend to like combine my kind of random interests with my coding skills and my data skills, just so that it keeps things interesting. So I mean, there's a lot of like data sets on Kaggle and stuff, but like
True.
I might as
Yeah.
well do something that I is
Yeah,
meaningful in many ways. So yeah,
true. Regarding randomness, you're also a cat person.
yeah.
Would you like to share with us some random facts about or one random fact about cats?
Ah, I there's so many random facts about because cats are so random and like, oh, actually, this is I don't wanna bum out people in the audience, but my cat has this condition, which is a bit unfortunate, where, it's like a virus, unfortunately, where, that makes my cat allergic to its teeth, which means
Okay.
that I have a cat who's almost toothless. She has, like,
Okay.
4 teeth left, like the fangs here,
Uh,
but for some reason, like, cats have a lot of like gum problems.
mhm.
So if you have a cat, get insurance, please, because we didn't
Okay.
insure this cat,
Good
and we
tip.
pay yeah, get insurance. You're in Germany. We have a global audience, but, we are both based in Germany, and this is insurance land. Um, we had to pay a lot to get our cat's, like, teeth removed.
Crazy.
Yeah, but they're cute.
Okay.
Love
And
them.
then my last random question for
Yeah?
you.
Mhm.
What is currently your favorite AI tool?
You know what? Do I use any kind of meaningful AI? I think I use ChatGPT a lot to replace Google search.
Mhm.
Google's I still usually default to Google search, but like when I need a more comprehensive like answer or like kind of say a template for I don't
Mhm.
know for something like an email that I want to write or documentation that I want to write, like then I just use ChatGPT.
Mhm.
And it's actually not too bad, but, like, as kind of like a starting point for whatever it is I'm trying to do. So, like, I still spend a lot of time actually, customizing the results to whatever I need it yeah,
Yeah.
whatever I need it for. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe also a good question for the audience, also for you to participate already here. What is your favorite AI tool right now? Is it also ChatGPT or is it maybe Midjourney? Some kind of completely different tool that is not yet mainstream. Let us know. We'll be excited.
Yeah.
Then let's come to our main part. Of course, I
Mhm.
introduced you already a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would also be nice to hear your introduction. So, what are you doing right now,
Mhm.
and how did you came into data?
Yeah, sure. So, I fell into the world of analytics engineering almost by accident, and I think a lot of analytics engineers will probably say the same thing since, as you already mentioned, it's a fairly new role over like that's kind of evolved over the last, I don't know, less than 5 years for sure. I fell into it by accident because after I finished my PhD, I, specifically wanted to work in tech and in data. When I wrapped up my PhD, it was when like data science just kind of became a thing, like the term
Mhm.
data science. And I'd really wanted to continue working in research and continue working in like with data, and data science just sounded like a good place to start for an ex academic, let's say. Um, but I joined a bunch of startups in my first year in Berlin. Well, there's two really, and just quickly learned that like well, pre-COVID, maybe things have changed now. Like many companies are not ready for data science, mostly because they haven't figured out the kind of a data strategy or kind of a way to like really leverage data
Mhm.
to make good decisions. So there wasn't a good use case for using data or data science, or they didn't have the data at all to support data science because you do need quite a few, data points in order to do some meaningful predictive analysis, or they just haven't even started with business intelligence at all, so they don't have any, data sets to work from. I mean, many data scientists will tell you that most of their work involves data cleaning. If you don't have clean data sets, there's not much to work with. And so, like, by the time, like, I'd kind of gotten, like, a data scientist role, I realized that, like, I needed to move further upstream and to actually kind of clean data and validate data and make sure that everything, that I need in order to do proper data science was there. So I'd done that, but then I realized actually I just kind of like to stay in this space of, like, doing data transformations, doing data cleaning, making sure that the data is tested, it's complete, it's validated, and be the say person that actually sends off these data sets to the people who need it. So that's how I ended up being more of a data engineer,
Mhm.
analytics engineer. I also like to say I'm a data curator.
Mhm.
That's what I do. I curate data, in a data warehouse and make sure that they are actually fitting the business needs and stuff like that. So, and kind of to wrap that up, I feel like this really fits well with my background in psychology and cognitive sciences, because yeah, I think an important component of that field is is to study how people organize knowledge,
Mhm.
and how people make sense of the world. And I think like working in data is about making sense of data and making sense of data in the context of the business that you work in. And so
Mhm.
I think this all kind of fits in well with my previous life as a psychologist, as a researcher, and my current life as someone who works in tech and codes for a living. So yeah,
Mhm.
there you go.
Interesting. So you started in data science, then you recognized, okay, there is no data science without you need data, you need qualitative data in order to make data science. So then you moved up the stream, as you just mentioned, to more data engineering practices,
Mhm.
and then you ended up in analytics engineering. From your perspective right now, what is the difference between data engineering and analytics engineering?
Right.
Or is there no difference? Is it the
Yeah.
same?
So I think the best description that I've heard of an analytics engineer is that an analytics engineer is a front end data engineer. So we
Mhm.
actually work at the tail end of the ELT
Mhm.
pipeline, so the extraction load
Mhm.
transform pipeline. We are the T of ELT, which actually just means that analytics engineering not too long ago, as recently as like yesterday or something, is that it was a part of data engineering. So
Yeah.
the decoupling of analytics engineering and data engineering is almost artificial, really. I think analytics engineering is data engineering, but in a rather
Mhm.
specialized form of it. And I
Mhm.
mean, that might be a controversial statement because many data engineers who fancy themselves as, kind of the infrastructure guy or the infrastructure person, that's fine too. But I think data engineering is such a broad field and such an essential field, that it doesn't hurt the industry or the field if some of us specialize. I mean, I've
Mhm.
worked with data engineers who just focus on infrastructure and know almost nothing about the business, how the data is actually used by the business. Whereas, analytics engineers, we create data sets that are primarily used for BI and data science and reporting. We know a lot about the business, or like, well, we know more about the business than the people working on infrastructure. So I
Mhm.
think it's just a specialized branch of data engineering, I would say.
Yeah. So do you find it beneficial to have it to give it also a specialized name?
Um, I think so. I think analytics engineering has been a good pathway for, let's say, data analysts to become more technical, quote unquote.
Mhm.
So, one description of an analytics engineer is that it's a front end data engineering role, but I also think it's a back end data analyst role because
True. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it's just like
Yeah.
we create these data sets that power the dashboards and reports that we send out to clients, to customers, to C level. executives and that kind of thing. And I think it makes um, yeah, it kind of gives a pathway to folks that are more involved in the business into something that's in a way that's more, let's say, more hands-on with like I guess kind of the that's definitely the kind of say more contact with raw data. So
Mhm.
it's like when you're an analyst, mostly you're kind of already using curated data for you that was, made for you. But like if you really want to know, let's say like, oh, where does this data come from?
Mhm.
Like how did we collect it and things like that. Those are questions that you can answer if you're more involved with kind of yeah, with piping that production database, for example, into
Mhm.
Snowflake or BigQuery.
Mhm.
And so it expands. I think this differentiation expands the career options for many people, especially since it's kind of perceived as more technical. Those who want to be more technical, quote unquote, can do so now that there
Mhm.
is a word for it.
Mhm. Yeah. I find it a good explanation for yeah, for the development of this role actually.
Mm,
Um, could you also provide us with a like a typical use case end to end? So when does
mhm.
your work start and when does it end?
Yeah. So I guess it depends a lot on, who else is in the company. So if there's like a other data engineers, if there's a data analyst, in yeah, or yeah, where you are as an analytics engineer, like situated in the company. So I can only speak, I guess, from my experience, and maybe I'll reference the most recent experience. When I was working at Paddle, I was actually called a data engineer, really. So I, yeah, was more like, I was like I was the data engineer that was mostly doing data transformations and data modeling, which meant that I didn't do any of the extraction and loading of raw data
Mhm.
into the data warehouse. I would do that
Mhm.
sometimes because like we had a Fivetran account, and sometimes like some stakeholder will request this data source, and there was already a connector on Fivetran, and I'm just like, well, I might as well do it because it takes me less than 5 minutes to connect this data source. But for the most part, I make sure that I work only with data that's already in the data warehouse.
Mhm.
So and then I use DBT, data build tool, to do my transformations and modeling. And what I was doing, or what I was creating for the data warehouse, were what you call kind of core data sets. Core
Mhm.
data sets, meaning these are the data sets that are uh, used by different business units within the company. So
Mhm.
meaning that like these are general purpose data sets that everyone needs. So this is not just like kind of some specialized data set that like one team needs or one team needs once. These are the
Mhm.
reusable data sets that will stay relevant for quite some time. And then after that's been pushed to production, like analysts will then take that data set that I've built and use it for their own whatever reporting and things like that. And sometimes these analysts are also DBT users, so they build like smaller data sets from the bigger data sets that I create,
Mhm.
so that they can kind of customize the core data sets to fit their needs. So yeah, I think that is the differentiation that I create, that I have had in my most recent role. So I provide the data set so that the analysts can use it, and they use it for some kind of dashboarding purpose, and I don't touch any of the BI tools for dashboarding.
Mhm.
So
Ah.
I'm not really involved in visualizing any of the data sets that I create.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess it depends because I was sitting in a data engineering team, which meant that I was still doing, Airflow
Mhm.
DAGs if I needed to, Fivetran connections, and if I needed to, API calls if I needed to. But if I were an analytics engineer in a business team, I would probably be doing dashboards as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Ah, okay. So you were part of a data engineering team, but your data analysts were in a separate team. You were not together in one data centralized data team, right?
So yeah, no, not really. So the centralized team was a data engineering team.
Mhm.
So people in that team were doing infrastructure and data transformations. But like then each business team had an analyst,
Ah.
and those were my main stakeholders, those analysts. Yeah,
Mhm.
so there was no central team for analysts, though.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So to summarize it, so you were like optimizing and enriching the already existing data with business logic, so to say. So
Exactly.
you were creating KPIs and also
Mhm,
structure it in a model so that the analysts could consume it and
mhm.
use it for building their dashboards and analytical solutions
Correct.
on the data that you were providing to them.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't the one creating the definitions for KPIs, though.
Mhm.
So I'm, mostly because I serviced many business units, which means that there are so many KPIs and there's only so much domain knowledge that I can have. So I relied on, yeah, the business teams to tell me what their KPIs were. And my job was to translate those business specifications into code, into SQL code, really. So yeah.
Mhm. You mentioned already some kind of tools that you were using,
Mhm.
like Fivetran, DBT, and
Yeah.
so on. Were there any more tools? And also, which kind of programming languages
Mhm.
did you use or do you use on a regular basis?
Yeah. So on a regular basis, I use SQL, so SQL.
Mhm.
And that's mostly because the most popular analytics engineering tool, DBT, is a SQL transformation tool. Um, uh, well, nowadays, like you can use Python with DBT,
Mhm.
but then I never really needed it as much as I used SQL. Um, but I can imagine because I think I know analytics engineering is um, well, it's a field in itself. It's not defined by the necessarily by the tools that you use. So I can imagine that like an analytics engineer, as long as you're doing data modeling and data transformations, doesn't really matter what languages you use, right? I mean, as long as the job is actually done. So I can imagine that if you were creating data sets with Python and that's what you do for a living, then you are an analytics engineer, but you're
Yeah.
just using another language. But
Yeah.
yeah, Python is always a handy language to have if you're an analytics engineer because it integrates well with the whole kind of Python ecosystem, right? Um, so DBT is one tool for sure. Analytics for analytics engineering, the most popular one. I think if I'm not mistaken, and DBT even popularized the term analytics engineer. But it's not the only tool in the market. So there's also Dataform, which is now owned by Google.
Mhm.
It's actually had a pretty decent usage, and it works very similarly to DBT, and it's also SQL based. Um, and of course, knowledge in cloud data warehousing is super helpful since analytics engineering kind of took off because the modern data stack, the ELT stack, actually took off, right?
Mhm.
So it's good to know like Snowflake and BigQuery and all the other popular data warehouses. Um, and it's good to know like how to create SQL queries that are optimized for those data warehouses.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are technical
Have you
stuff.
heard of this statement that an analytics engineer is a data engineer just using DBT? There is
Yeah.
this myth, and I think I read it somehow on Medium where I found this statement. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the other statement of like, oh, just because you use DBT doesn't make you an analytics engineer.
Yeah.
Um, I think, yeah, unfortunately, this is the world that we live in, where like we define our careers and our positions based on our tools. So I
Mhm.
think and in one part that's kind of just I guess human nature, but on the other hand, I think it is a bit of a disservice to the field because um it's easy to pick up tools, like knowledge of tools, and tools change all the time. So if you invest a day or two training up on kind of DBT or Dataform or whatever it is, you can kind of use that tool. You can use it, but to use it effectively is another thing. And so what I think would be great is if we focus like analytics engineering training, for example, on skills like data modeling and data transformations. Or like when I talk about data modeling, I mean how do you represent the business in its data? Like, what kind of
Mhm.
data sets do we actually need in order to help this business make better decisions?
Yeah.
How do I ask business stakeholders the right questions so I actually know what's important to them so that I can build data sets that reflect what's important to them? And I think
Mhm.
those are the kind of skills um, that we need to focus on, really. Yeah,
Yeah, it's more like a way of thinking and handling problems and data instead of um, using a tool.
exactly, for
Yeah.
sure.
There was someone I know who said it's comparable to driving a car or
Mhm.
making a car license. So, like if you're doing the car license, you can use any car, but you
Yeah,
know how to drive and you know the rules and you know how to behave in a car, and it doesn't matter which car you're using because like it's always the same. You just have to adapt a little bit on the different car, of course, but at
yeah,
the end you still know how to use to use a car and to move it and to brake and so on.
yeah,
So
for
I think
sure.
it's quite comparable.
Exactly. I agree with that.
Yeah. Are there any more skills that you would like to highlight? So what is important to know? For example, or what is there something that you would recommend from a skill basis to someone who is looking forward moving into analytics engineering?
Um, yeah, I think, kind of touching again on the, data modeling, part, like, I think, um, it involves, like I said, it involves knowing what is important to the business, and depending on the company that you work in, you might, as an analytics engineer, not have a lot of contact with business stakeholders. Um, but just by design, like, you're not in that team or whatever, like I was. So I think one skill that you need to develop really is communication and stakeholder management. And this probably applies to most tech roles anyways, that you need to have good communication skills and not just technical skills. Because as an analytics engineer, you need to know what's important for the business. Um, and you need to know how to translate those business requirements into SQL queries or Python scripts or whatever, so that you can build the data sets that are essential for the business to meet its goals, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, you need to be able to tease out this information um, from business teams, because they don't also know what's important for you to know, right?
Mhm.
So, um, one, like, challenge is, like, let's say that, like, I kind of going back to, kind of my experiences, say at Paddle, like, um we were, I don't work there anymore, but, like, it is a payments infrastructure company, and so the most important concept, for that company is payments, right? And in my experience at that company, a payment could mean different things for different business teams. So, for example, for the product team, a payment is anything that goes through the payments infrastructure, which is the product. The product is the payments infrastructure. So it means, to them, a payment is is any kind of transaction that brings in money, or any transaction that fails.
Mhm.
So if unsuccessful and successful payments are payments, doesn't matter. But say for revenue, like, if you care about revenue, a payment is not a payment if it doesn't bring in money.
Mhm.
So only successful payments count as payments.
Mhm.
So, I needed to build a data set, um, that addresses both of these needs. And then another issue, is with the concept of countries. So as a global company that accepts global payments, country in the payments world can mean so many things. And there were so many debates about, like, what is this country? So you can have a country. First of all, the bank of your the sorry the your card can have a country, which is then
Mhm.
the same as the bank that issued it. But then country could also be the country of the IP address that you used when you made that transaction. So,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
all of these, like, little kind of almost exhausting, like, details, like, you wouldn't be able to find out yourself if you're, an analytics engineer sitting in a technical team, not talking to your business stakeholders. So you need to
Mhm.
be able to understand what's important for the business and how to tease out all of these, like, tiny details that might not seem important, but are actually
Mhm.
very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to understand it and then translate it into how you model your data, right?
For sure.
Because
For
that is your main goal to represent the logic or to model data in a way so that is represented the kind of reality so that
Exactly.
someone from business can use this data set and can 100% rely on the results that or the insights that are taking from these data sets.
Yeah, for sure. So it's
Mhm.
like you can't like, I don't know, like when we had, um, a data set, with country data, it was almost not enough to leave the name as country. It had to be like country underscore bank or something, country
Mhm.
underscore, I don't know, IP address or something, just to make sure
Mhm.
that these very kind of
Mhm.
seemingly consequential differences were exposed. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you very much. That was
Yeah.
like very detailed insight to one specific use case. So for the
Sure.
audience, if there is any one of you who has questions for Marielle for her role and experience as an analytics engineer, feel free. You still have time to add your questions to the comments.
Awesome.
And meanwhile, coming to the next question. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I'm gonna show this slide, and yeah, for that we have to to
Yeah.
delete this other one. So I
Yeah.
would like to talk with you a little bit more about the details of your task and responsibilities. And thanks for providing us the information and to break down into different buckets.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so this is representing more or less some kind of typical workday or work week, or how did you came up with this kind of breakdown of your
Yeah.
task?
Sure. So, this this reflects mostly the work that I've done in at Paddle, just because it's
Mhm,
the most kind of recent experience in my memory. So the biggest slice of the pie, let's say, is with the implementation. So it was still very much an individual contributor role,
mhm,
where I spent a lot of time just basically, yeah, writing SQL queries, doing data cleaning, data transformations, data modeling, that involved doing code reviews, not just of the people in my team, but also people like those analysts that I mentioned that are sitting in different
mhm,
business teams when they needed help for some of the more complicated transformations. I would assist them with that.
mhm,
And so, yeah, it's mostly SQL querying actually,
mhm.
and using DBT and all of that.
One question
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
that, do you also had to make such kind of performance improvements on on SQL queries in order to speed up
Mhm.
loading time, for example?
Yeah, for sure. Like this was something that we also focused on kind of mostly in the last months because we noticed that our our Snowflake bill was skyrocketing, let's say.
Mhm,
So this involves kind of optimizing queries after well, actually, like, not in the kind of, well, because like, you need to be able to see how performance is going before you can optimize it. So, like, yeah, we kind of when we noticed that some of our DAGs, which what you would call, kind of a DBT project and how it's kind of structured, like, when we see that our runs are taking so much more time and, yeah, costing us more credits, then,
mhm,
we need to go back and optimize it.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, it does involve some of that as well.
mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we were lucky enough to have a kind of fully staffed team that would, like, catch some of these, let's say, irregularities so that, like,
Mhm.
we could just work together with them. Yeah, cool.
Cool, and then the next
Next.
bucket is,
Mhm.
about meetings,
Yeah,
30%.
yeah, I mean, there are days when, like, this would probably be, half of the pie, let's say.
Mhm,
And because like I said, like, you know, yeah, analytics engineering is about kind of gathering business requirements and translating that into data sets. And so, who knows the business better than the business teams? And so that involved me sitting in meetings with them to tease out all of these requirements from them. And I say that like meetings, like I don't just mean like our meetings that were scheduled in advance. It also involves answering Slack messages, like, "Hey, this data set is confusing. Can you help me with this? Or like, oh, I have this problem that I want to solve. Can you help me with that? And it's a lot of it is ad hoc as well, and so that
Mhm.
takes up quite some time.
Mhm.
There you go.
So is there anything also related to, like a team meeting, like a sure fix? Did you
Oh,
also
right.
have something like that?
Yeah, at least in my last role, there were like I was working very closely with one of the biggest, or even the biggest business or the biggest commercial team with the most
Mhm.
analysts. I think there were like, I don't know, at least 4 DBT users in that team. And so I had regular meetings with them every week. So that
Mhm.
kind of takes, and obviously like meetings with my team as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So continuing to the next part, 20%, you,
Mhm.
yeah, spend time on creating concepts and
Yeah.
designs.
Yeah. This involves like, yeah, kind of planning a little of how to structure the data in the data warehouse. So there's a bit of like data, I guess, architecting, let's say,
Mhm.
kind of coming up with just the kind of ways to organize the data assets in the data warehouse. And
Mhm.
this also in this bucket, I would also include kind of conceptualizing best practices for DBT, how to use DBT and how to do data transformations and data modeling. Because, like I said, I wasn't the only DBT user, wasn't the only person doing analytics engineering tasks, and we needed a way to kind of standardize our processes so that when we're looking at Snowflake, we're not confused by all of these different databases and all these different schemas and like,
Mhm.
for example, we had to, kind of agree on naming conventions, for
Mhm.
example. So how do we name our intermediate tables or views? How do we name our, let's say, MART models, that kind of thing? Or how do we even name certain columns? For example, we don't call our vendors, or we call them sellers, that kind of thing. So all of
Mhm.
these kind of little, um, yeah, little details would fall under this bucket, kind of best practice proposals and
Mhm.
all of that.
Documentation. Yeah.
Documentation, yeah, because I feel like now that I'm talking about it, I feel like this should have been a larger bucket, but there you
Probably,
go.
yes.
Like,
And I think always underestimated, right?
exactly, and I'm
Uh,
just like, honestly, is 100% even enough? So I feel like it's like I needed 200% for this, but whatever. Yeah, here we are.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And the last one
Yeah.
is training. So is that about
Mhm.
your individual development, or was it
Mm.
also for like that you are helping others
Yeah.
to upskill?
So this is a bit of both. So, I needed like, what like tools have updates, and so like, there will always be kind of a new feature of DBT that might be useful. Luckily, with DBT, like they have kind of regular webinars as well. So I'd kind of join those to see what's up and see if like I can use some of that information in my current workflow. Um, Also, I mean, I would put in this bucket just reading documentation, really kind of like, oh, how do I write this Ginger macro?
Mhm.
Um, then I go look at the documentation, or like look at the kind of DBT Slack channel to see if anyone has encountered the same problem as me, and then kind of customize, yeah, what I read in my own kind of, and contextualize it into my own kind of problems. And of course, like I was also helping a lot of my peers as well, kind of
Mhm.
upskill in DBT. Um, so I did a lot of onboarding as well for this for the newcomers who then would be using DBT and that sort of thing. And of course, kind of more ad hoc things, like, oh, I have this error. How can I solve it? That sort of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it.
Interesting. Cool. Thank you very much. That
Yeah,
was quite detailed.
sure. No worries.
So, what would you say? Was there anything in your career so far that was really a booster for you in some kind of way
Mhm.
to guide you the direction into your last position, or maybe
Mhm.
also now as you started being a freelancer?
Yeah.
Was there anything that you would say that was a game changer for you or a
Yeah.
real career booster?
Yeah. I mean, I say that like that we shouldn't focus too much on tools.
Mhm.
But to be fair, like DBT really like has been a game changer for my career
Mhm.
because when around the time that I realized that like the company that was working for couldn't really do data science without proper data sets, like I'd found DBT at the right moment because then it was fitting an exact need at the
Mhm.
time. So for me, that really changed the trajectory of my career because um, soon after that, so many other companies that started to adopt DBT. And then in a way, I just worked backwards and learned concepts like proper data modeling, dimensional data modeling, star schemas, all the kind of these
Mhm.
terms that you hear in this space.
Mhm.
But actually learning a tool um, that is used widely and is objectively really good at what it does has really been, kind of transformative for my career. So like in terms of I mean, I don't know if that will ever happen to me again or if it'll happen to for anyone else again. So I wouldn't bank on kind of, you know, I wouldn't then give the advice to people. It's like just wait for the next big thing and use that and
Mhm.
kind of, but like I think it's more of like paying attention to what your company really needs and try
Mhm.
to be the person who solves those like needs for them,
Mhm.
right?
Would you
Regardless
also
of the tool.
say to keep your eyes open to what comes up in the technology and
Yeah.
data space?
Yeah.
So don't be, yeah, or keep yourself up to date, so to say.
Yeah, for sure. I
Mhm.
mean, I think what I would say, is that, like, be involved in the community. So I think one of the biggest, um, uh, upsides of being a DBT user is being involved in the community.
Mhm.
It's not just because it's, it helps you with your job, but it's fun because people are nice and
Mhm.
people are
Mhm.
motivated and, you meet like-minded people and, it just kind of gives a kind of nice kind of break in the day when you
Mhm.
not go on DBT Slack channel and you just kind of see that there are other people who kind of struggle with the same things that you've been struggling with. Um, and yeah, it kind of, it widens your professional network, but in a sincere way, right?
Mhm.
It's not like you're constantly hustling and like, talking about work or anything. It just makes it fun.
Mhm.
And through the community, like that's how you learn more of like what's up and coming. And then yeah, maybe you can get a lucky break, but then again, that isn't not necessarily what you should be joining communities for. It's just keep up to date with technology, like, and make friends along the way kind of thing,
Mhm.
I guess.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good recommendation, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, coming to the end already of our talk
Mhm.
today, I always brought a last question for you, and it perfectly fits to our yeah, to what you just mentioned before. So, how do you keep yourself up to date in a fast-pacing data world?
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely, being involved in the community,
Mhm.
like either attending meetups, virtual meetups, kind of local
Mhm.
meetups in Berlin, lucky that there are many in Berlin. I mean, even if I wasn't living in Berlin, I think like the Slack kind of communities are a really good like space for staying in touch with the community. Um, Again, like yeah, kind of I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of contradicting myself when I say don't look at tools, but then like I'm also saying, oh, but a lot of these tools actually now have communities surrounding that tool. So there's DBT, and I was even thinking that Fivetran is also doing events, and Snowflake is also doing events. But I'm going to say that like maybe a lot of these companies are recognizing the value of community.
Yeah.
So it's good to just kind of stay in touch. With the latest development with these tools by following the communities that they've created. And again, like I guess making the effort to realize that it isn't about the tool, but it is about the skill behind it. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
therefore, we got a question from Alexander. Which Slack spaces
yeah,
can
sure,
you recommend? Yeah,
yeah.
are these Slack spaces open for everyone, or do
Mhm.
you need a custom invitation, or do you also need to pay for it?
Yeah, well, so I have never been in a Slack group that I need to pay for, so I don't think
Mhm.
that's smart. But,
Okay.
there are, like, community the DBT Slack community for sure. Join that, especially if you're a DBT user, that's super, super helpful. And there's one called Data Talks, I believe,
Mhm.
by Alexei Grigoriev, if I'm not mistaken. I
Mhm.
think he's also Berlin-based, and he organizes, these really cool free Zoom camps, as he calls it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I know
Um,
that. Shout
yeah,
out to Alexei.
yeah,
If you're
amazing
listening right
stuff,
now, shout out.
amazing, amazing person, amazing, effort as well.
Yeah,
I think there's also AI Guild. Um, what else? Um, um, I don't know, I think that's about it.
that's about it.
Um,
So the
yeah.
DBT community, I assume you can join them from their website.
Yeah, exactly, from DBT Labs.
Yeah.
Oh, also Pi Ladies, which I'm part of. So it's a group where
Mhm.
like for women, not just women though, but primarily women who program in Python. We also have a Slack group, and so that's quite nice as well to keep up to date with the Python community and ecosystem.
Good. I think we will collect that after our talk.
Yeah,
So collect all your recommendations and then, yeah, add them to our YouTube description box, and
awesome.
then you can find everything underneath our talk.
Great.
So thank you very much, Maria. That
Thank you
was
so
a
much.
very beautiful talk. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks again for inviting me. This was fun.
Yeah, and as you see, the time is rushing. Like,
Mhm.
I think we could have had it, yeah, we could have extended it even longer.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I think there is more that we could cover, maybe also for in a second round somehow in the future. So if you like,
Yeah, let's do that.
you can come. You can come back and make maybe also an in-depth session about the analytics engineering or maybe also DBT.
Yeah,
If this is something we can also figure it out
yeah,
after our talk. Yeah.
cool.
So thank you very much again.
Yeah,
And
you're
to
welcome.
end it up here,
Mhm, mhm.
yeah, what to say? So we are gonna do a break of 2 weeks right now, and we will be back on the 6th of July, where we have our rescheduled event for the satellite data scientists. So if you don't want to miss it, yeah, register right now on LinkedIn, or you can also add the notification button on YouTube. You can do that. And yeah, if you don't want to miss any more of our events in the future, you can also follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you like it, thumbs up. It's helping us to reach even more people who don't know us yet. And yeah, if you have any feedback for us on a qualitative side, feel also free to send us your feedback. Yeah, it's always helpful to collect feedback from our audience so that we are also able to improve in the future. And that's it. So thank you very much again for everyone attending, and see you the next time. Bye bye.
Bye, take care. Bye.